I want to introduce everybody once again to the BGR Load Raider Load 1 machine. This is a spring and shock coilover assembly load raider that we have built here to help us with our dirt late model program. The importance behind this is really mainly to save you a lot of time and work when you're doing setup. And I'm not going to go into all the details of how everything works and how. I'm just going to talk a little bit about what the uses are. The main objective for having this machine is just to be able to adjust the car, and like I always say, keep everything consistent. Repeatability is really the main goal that you're after, in your racing program. It's really a waste of time to go to a racetrack, have a good night, and not know where the car was, what changes you made, and where it ended up, bringing everything to. So how this thing really fits into your program is really with scaling the car. Once you know what you want the weights to be in the car, how much wedge you want in the car, your left rear percentages, you can go to this machine, take all of your shocks and springs, and make any change that you want, and always go back to those settings. Now how that works is that when the car is sitting at ride height, it takes a certain amount of weight to hold it at ride height. So if I had this shock and spring assembly on the right front of my race car, and when it's sitting on the ground statically, scaled with all the wedge in it that I want, there's going to be a certain distance from this shock eye to this shock eye, and that's going to be a certain amount of weight. And let's just say that distance is, let's just say it's 16 inches and the weight is 700 pounds. So if I wanted to make a spring change, all I would have to do is take this shock and spring assembly, put whatever spring I wanted, put it in the machine, run it up to 16 inches, and then turn the nut until I have 800 pounds on it. Put it back on the car, and the only thing I would have changed is the shock. A lot of people overlook the fact that most of us run gas shocks now. This gas shock is actually charged with a certain amount of gas pressure, and I'm going to show you just how much that changes in the machine before we even get started. And I'm going to demonstrate one of the other features to this machine as we go as well. This is our coilover remover. So if I don't want to turn all those turns out of that nut, I just stick it up in here, grab my little tool, and I'm going to take my spring right off. I can do this in a couple of seconds. A crew member can do it, and it's just that simple. This just makes your workload at the shop so much easier. Now back to the gas pressure part. I'll mount this shock up in our unit here. I'm just going to show you how much this affects the spring rate on your race car. Jody, I should probably have put this in the right direction. That makes everything much easier. Now this scale is reading 0 right now, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to compress it a little bit, and then we can watch the gas in the shock will slowly raise the amount of weight. Now this is just me. We'll stop it right here with just a little bit of compression on it. At about 1 inch of compression of this shock, this shock here adds 28 pounds to your spring rate. Now I don't know how many people change 25-pound increments. Everybody? Yeah. Well, if you made a 25-pound increment change on your spring and you didn't take into account that you had a gas pressure shock, guess what? You just made a 50-pound adjustment. That's why it's very important to always load rate your coilover assemblies as assemblies and not just as changing a spring here and there. You could scale your car out all day long with 4 or 5 different sets of springs, and the instant you change one shock from a gas pressure shock to an oil shock, you have made a spring change without even knowing that you just made a spring change. And that affects handling of your race car. Now, I had another guy ask the question, you know what, I have a good idea for you. Why don't you build a machine that not only will do the coilover assemblies, but will rate the pull bars? And I thought, you know what, I think we can probably do that right now. So we just take a pull bar, put it in our unit, and notice this is about the average length. Well, this is a 6 coil out of a late model, which would pretty much equal a pull bar on a modified. So we can take that. If this was our pull bar, we could stick it up in here. Same way. We know what our center to center distance should be, and then we can actually rate that by pulling it down to where we want it. So if this one we wanted to rate it at, say, 20 inches of length, I would just take it down to 20 inches. And then it'll give me my measurement at 20 inches, which on this particular one it's set at 256 pounds. It makes it so that I can repeat this every time I make a change to the car. If I change this spring, if I change how many turns I put in here, how many I take out, if I change the preload on it, I can always go back to whatever that preload was for any given condition. I think this is one of the most versatile coilover load rating machines that's out there. And you know, it does some of the things that the dirt late model teams need it to do, that maybe, you know, some of the asphalt teams didn't think of in the past.